Okay.
Okay. Now, you still hear me?
Yes.
Now, instead of making, going a lot deeper into the drum rack aspect, let's go ahead and move on into, let's start with bass. So we'll do pretty much the same thing when it comes to drum rack as you will with your any instrument that Ableton provides for you. So you got modules like, and here we work with, go down to the instrument rack, and you have a bunch of different sections here to choose what you would like to start with. Now, if you download plugins, you purchase those things to use exterior types of sounds and whatnot, you will actually be working through the plugin section. And I'm not going to open up any of these because if you take the course, I don't teach anything with external plugins because, one, some people can't download them, get them to work right. Other people, they buy them, and some people don't have them, or they purchase one, and I don't have that, so I can't work on their project with them. So I do recommend through the duration of a course, if you were taking it, to stick with everything in the instrument rack that Ableton offers. So we'll go and check out some bass notes here, some bass sounds. Okay, this gives you a preview. Now we're on MIDI, and if I double click this bass, I now have the bass module that I just chose lined up to work with. There is more than one way to so there's more than one way to play this stuff out before you decide to record it or command the MIDI to do as you want. One option is actually most of the middle keys here on your keyboard will allow you to play. Now, obviously, that is a very high octave for bass. The Z key will bring it down, Z, and the X will bring it back up. So you don't necessarily have to have an external MIDI module to produce. But since we do have something here, we are going to kind of come up with a little melody. I kind of like this C note here in this octave. Now you can record it on your own by just hitting the circle buttons instead of double clicking in this area and opening up a MIDI, new scene. So if we were just to hit record, now they have the record button on, and you can see it's working over here. You can obviously it's offbeat. You have a couple different options. Within a scene, you can Command A, highlights all, Command U, automatically adjust the quantization to whatever settings you have it. Here we have 1/8, so we'll hear how it sounds, but a lot of times if I'm quantizing stuff, I go 1/16 because I like a little off and a little swing to what I'm doing, but an eighth is going to make it very regimented. Yeah. So when you have MIDI in here, like I said, you can always adjust everything you have up until the time that you are sending it out for mastering. So you can adjust the MIDI however you like. For this, since if you guys are taking the course, are not most likely going to be having equipment to work on, we'll do it everything in Ableton. So, where was that note? Yeah, like that. Let me scroll down until I see where it is. Okay, there's that C. So, I'll allow this to play, and I'll add one here. Okay. Alright, now it's got a little bit too much release, and what release is once the MIDI note stops, how long you hear the sound kind of fade out. Attack is the exact opposite. The attack will play later. So if I were to, so it won't hit the very beginning of that sound coming out of the module. Now going back to the release, let's tighten it up. That works. Now there's a bunch of different types of effects you can do with every different type of module. Most of them have a filter cut off. So kind of give it just a punchy feeling. That works. And you can play with these all you want. What I do tell my students is push all the buttons and turn all the knobs, because the more you mess with, the more you learn. Just have your hand on Command Z to undo, because I mean, it's a lifesaver. So that's a cool little kind of sub bass thing going on there. Sorry, I'm hearing myself with feedback, so if I sound a little slow, that's why. So from here, I'm gonna hit Command Shift T. That'll create a new MIDI track. If I just hit Command T, I create a new audio track. But we're not working with audio yet. We're simply doing everything in MIDI. It's more efficient this way. It gives you more ability to fine-tune everything. Like if you create another sound, a different part of the song, where something you already created is now conflicting with it, now you can tighten that up or change it around. So definitely beneficial. All right, from here, let's go create maybe a piano track. So we are in instruments, in the instrument rack. I will open it again, close the bass. Let's go piano and keys, and grand piano. Sounds real cheesy right now, some Casio stuff, but there's stuff you can do to make it actually sound a lot better. So let me turn the record onto that one. Okay, so when you find notes, you know, and you're like, oh, I don't want to play them live, but I want to remember them, kind of if you hold down the notes you have, then you can scroll on the scene, and you can find the 3 notes you're holding. So maybe we'll just double click here, just so we have those notes. Now we're not necessarily always doing that in fashion, but melody to work with. You got your kick, your hi-hat, you have bass line kind of grooving. You know, I like to build stuff in a progressive format so that I can always continue to build from there. But if I just creating all these crazy sounds and I'm looping it, I'm gonna get tired of it. And then I also have nowhere to go from there. So introducing sounds one at a time, bringing them to fruition and allowing them to work together will ultimately allow you to listen in your session view a lot longer. It'll allow you to be more creative in having stuff loop and turning things on and off. Let me show you something. So even if you don't have a MIDI, you have keys. Now, Ableton offers something called key mapping. Now, with key mapping, you have the opportunity to control on, off, level, up, down, stuff like this. For whatever buttons you have on Ableton, you can also map them to your keyboard. So, I'm going to open up the drum rack here, and I have my kick. Now the kick, sometimes I want to take the take it out. So what I'll do is now that I have key map enabled, I will click the number one, which is the track on and off, and then I'll type number one. Doing that, I can exit out of there. Now, number one will turn my kick on and off. So as I'm working, I want to build stuff, but hey, I want to take that kick out to kind of like, oh, what can I add to, in a fill before we come up with a new set of measures? You can do that with easy, just a button. You have to use Ableton to your advantage, okay? It's there, it's user friendly for a reason. At the beginning of your journey, you may see 1,000 buttons, but realistically, by the end of your journey, which never really ends, you're gonna turn those buttons from 1,000 to 100 in your head. And it's just because you are working more with the program, you're getting used to it, you're utilizing what it's offering. So key mapping, wonderful tool. Now, if you are using MIDI, this is basically this right here, the APC40, is looking at that. All these buttons here mimic that. Call it a mixing board, but it's got, other knobs and stuff like sorry, hearing myself, repeating myself is very difficult. So, from here, we didn't even have to key map if we have MIDI. We can just turn tracks on and off. So that's a full track on and off. I'm gonna turn the bass off. All this stuff is right here. Also, this is your scene ending stuff, so I can stop the scene for the piano. If I'm working with something else, this is kind of just working along with live, and if you wanted to perform live, this is kind of like the gateway to do so. Now I turn it back on. I'm gonna stop my drums. Start them again with just the hi-hat. Okay, it's kind of like a basic setup for MIDI. Now, what I want to do right now is kind of see if you guys have any questions for what we have learned so far. And let me see if I can answer some of those before I move on to something a little more advanced. Any questions? I guess I'm just this awesome teacher. Everybody knows it. Perfect. Okay, we'll move on.
What would make the sense is just to ask who would do, what kind of experience do guys have who are attending? Do you want to ask?
No, you can. Yeah, I think you just did ask. I know
Mm-hmm.
Alex said that he downloaded Ableton. Um, he said he's being a baby in the chat, but I mean, you may have some amazing music. It may just take somebody to help explain certain things to help bring you out in your potential. So, by all means, man, you can hit me up and show me your stuff or ask me questions whenever.
Basic
Praveen,
beginners, I
Martina,
see.
excuse me.
Basic beginners here. Any vocalists, any musicians, any DJs here, so we know. Just downloaded. Alana just down DJ. Oh, great. We have a DJ. We have just a beginner. Any musicians who play instruments? Just curious. Singer.
Taking a
Wonderful.
poll. Oh, where's
Nice.
this chat? I need to get back to this chat. I can't see it. Okay.
All right.
All right. All right. Now, if there's no more questions, I will continue. God, it's so hard to hear yourself at the same time.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
just nice to see you using the software. Even I find it fascinating.
Yeah. Well, what's a big benefit with this course is we not only, provide you the curriculum, but we do weekly feedback sessions with everybody.
Somebody's asking what hi-hat. Rob will provide all sorts of vocabulary as you go through the
Sure.
course because there's so many things everybody has to learn as you go along and memorize lots of new words.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But a benefit with working this class, like I was saying, um, the weekly feedback sessions. Everybody who kind of has a question but is afraid to ask, anybody who's in the the course for that semester can join in on the sessions and ask those questions. And everybody can kind of hear what's going on, where everybody is at, and along with that, I record those Zoom feedback sessions. So in doing that, I upload them to the curriculum. You guys, if you missed them one week, are more than welcome to go back and watch those videos at any time.
Yes,
Also,
I'm gonna send the link to the course Rob referring to in the chat so you can get familiar as Rob teaching you other things.
right. Also, with that, I do give you guys homework. So you guys have assignments um, every week. I give you the video, then feedback sessions, stuff like that. Show you anywhere you may be lacking, but you do have assignments you kind of have to turn in. Um, we want everybody to be accountable because we know that we can get you on the right path within 8 weeks to becoming a music producer. And so our goal is to have everybody, on a not a tight leash, but crack the whip and say, hey, do your assignment so that when the week we're learning about something new, you're not asking about previous weeks, stuff like that. We have a 24/7 WhatsApp chat, and yeah, I'm usually always available. So it's definitely a benefit. All right, a hi hat. We are serious, right? Okay, I'm just double checking. All right, I'm going to go through a list of hi hats, and it's just something you're going to hear. Now I'm going back down to my drum samples, and I'm going to open up the subfolder hi hat. These are hi hats. These are closed versions of hi hats. Now, some of them sound like live drums, some of them are very analog, you know, processed, gritty, but the fact of the matter is, you have so many to choose from when you join this course that you're not going to know what to do with yourself. I probably, throughout my entire time making music in my whole life, I may use 2% of this entire drum rack. It's just too much. But that's the beauty of creating your own drum rack, saving that drum rack. You kind of fine tune the sounds you like. Once we get way further down, we find open hi hats. These are also hi hats. They're just allowed to have more release. They're open. If you think about a crash, stuff on a drum set, that's more attuned to what open hi hats are. Kind of like that. I'm going to drag that down to the 4 slot. Like Jaws. Okay. So like I was saying before, the lowest notes on your keyboard or any MIDI module you're using are always going to show your drum rack sounds. All right. Now let's create a third scene for our drums. So we'll call this, rename it by hitting Command R, and we'll hit Open Hat. This
Rob,
is
your
just,
voice is like echoing a little bit.
now I'm echoing.
Echo.
Damn. All right. Hold on, everybody.
Is it for everybody or just for me? I wonder.
All right. Can you hear me still?
Now I can hear you without echo. Yeah, it looks like
Oh,
it sounds good.
beautiful. Beautiful. See, now it's like suddenly working again. where I don't have to hear myself, and now I
Yay!
can work way better now. Oh my
Awesome.
god. Okay, this is great. Everybody can hear me. But wait, let me hit play. Can you still hear me?
Yes, you cracked the code.
Oh, I
Haha.
didn't. No, I didn't. I already tried this one. It really is Zoom. Zoom is so fickle. It's funny. Okay, so on our third scene here for the drum rack, we are going to create and call it open hat because we're adding the open hat to it. So on the first one, we just had our kick and closed hi hat, which was this. Okay, second one, double hat. Third one, open hat, but we haven't added it yet. So we'll double click it. And open hat sounds like this. All right, let's add it at the same time as the regular hat. Now remember, MIDI is just commands. You can move it wherever you want, and whatever sound is programmed to that particular line or note, that's what it'll do. It's basically a slave. Whereas audio, the WAV files are their own kingdom, and all you can do is kind of mold them and steal some of their land or reverse them, change their pitch a little bit. But with MIDI, it's more like ones and zeros because music is just as much math as it is feeling. And the more you work with Ableton, you understand these things. You work on grids, stuff like that. Okay, so now we've added this open hi-hat here. Let's maybe tune it because it might be too loud, too open. All right. I'm gonna turn off this piano track. You can hear it. All right, this is our open hat. It's cutting off too quickly. Let's fade it out. Okay. A little bit better of a sound. I don't think we need to tune it differently. It's kind of got a nice pitch to it. But what I will do is go over to the volume and turn the master. Now in the module is your master volume. But if you were to open up the scene and you click on one of these notes, you can change the velocity here too. So let's see, it's a lot lower on that first one. This is not your master volume. So it allows you to change the volume of the track, the velocity, within every single command that you put. So maybe I'll take that one down too. That's not the right one. Okay, I'm gonna take this one down a little too. All right, now from here, at some point, I am also going to want to just have a kick in my drum rack. Now, you don't have to actually put the kick itself in this drum rack. This track itself is the drum rack. You see it's labeled up here. You could have a kick separate, its own drum rack, however you like to do it. It is helpful to when you're structuring and building stuff to stay focused on a drum rack by adding the kick inside of it. But on occasion in a song, you'll hear it's just like kick and bass. Well, there's more than one way to get to that, but this is the way we're going to do it. We are going to move these two down, and I'm going to duplicate this one. Now, from the very top, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to delete the hi-hats from kick hat, and I'm going to rename it kick. You can move things around, change them up, just this way so we have this, if we wanted it. See, as you go down, you accumulate more sounds. This eventually, when you do stuff like this, you're eventually going to be able to translate it onto the sequencer. So let's say that I want to start my track with just kick. You have everything labeled out here. Beautiful. Well, that's all it took. Now I want to progress it with my drums. Excuse me, with a hi-hat. Well, from here, now you're building everything in the linear format. You're able to see it. You're now telling a story. So everything's going to work as one as you add tracks. Let's just say we put the bass here already at the 9th measure. So we 8 measures without it. when you see what you have done here, and when I teach you how important MIDI is, and spending 4 weeks on it is super important, because by the time you get here, you already know your track, you know how you want to lay it out. And then once you do that, you can move on to phase three, which is actually automation, adding new sounds in and out. Now you're strictly, for the most part, working inside of the sequencer. But you already have this banging track because you were working on it for weeks, or you've just been looping it so much that you fine-tuned it. So instead of just building a kick or a hi-hat on here and trying to make it all work across and adding a bunch of different tracks just for drums, you've become extremely efficient. You can even see all your commands, which are drums, here. So let's say we just have the kick. See, it's named kick here. Let's say for the last measure, which is here, 16 to 17, I wanted to take it out. Say there was more instruments involved. You can do one of two things. You could simply delete it, or you can keep your MIDI string solid and go inside and just delete it from here. You would probably say to yourself at this point, well, Rob, why wouldn't I just delete that whole MIDI? Well, you can, but you're not going to learn how to get in there inside your MIDI once you're in your sequencer and kind of work with multiple MIDI commands. Like, there's two in here now. Now, if we had the third one laid out, now we have three. Now we see as we progress and accumulate more sounds, our MIDI gets more complicated. So if you were like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and delete my kick from here, well, you don't learn very much, because let's say, in every 16 measures in house music, the kick comes out for like a measure or two, so that you can develop a new sound, a new growing progression into something else. Now, I'm laying this bass out a little more. I actually didn't even write what this bass was. Let's do that. I'm going to put sub bass, and I'll rename it sub bass here. Okay, so instead of just deleting it, let's say over here where we have more MIDI sounds, I just deleted it. Well, now you're not only taking the kick out, but you just took the hi-hat out, which sometimes for the beat you're making could be cool. But you're not going to learn how to get in there and edit certain parts of your scenes if you don't separate it and kind of change up the commands from here. And that's what you did. You just commanded the kick to come out of the scene, so you still have the hi-hat. It's not rocket science. And sorry, one second. Is anybody hearing echo or no? No echo? Can you still hear me? Yes. Oh, I'm measuring. Okay. What went away? I stopped the beat, but can you hear me talk still? Okay, cool. All right, cool. Now let me go back to this question real quick. Are measures and bars the same thing? Technically, yes. I mean, and it's all how you, like if you're a lyricist and you're spitting bars, I want to spit 16 bars. Yeah, that's 16 measures. So yeah, I would say, yes, bars and measures are the same thing. It may get confusing because you see a lot of little bars in here, and you can zoom out and you see a lot of little bars. But yes, in musical terms, I would say bars and measures are the same thing. We use the timing of 4/4, as you can see here at the top left. If you were to change your timing to anything else, the beat, the bars would repeat at whatever time. If you did 3/4, it would only have 3 of those notches between another bar. It's all about timing and however you want to structure your music. I'm a huge fan of Radiohead, and they usually do a lot of 5/4. So they it's very unique in the way they do their music. It's never just like a 1, 2, 3, 4. I think same thing with bands like uh, Tool. If anybody listens to Tool, their music and their timing is all over the place. But electronic music, house, even if you're doing dubstep, all these sorts of things, techno, whatever, it's all the same. Even if the kick is happening different, your timing is still set up as a 4/4 because it keeps looping the same amount of measures. Like if you were a DJ and you were playing these tracks together, they're all 4/4 and they're all working together. So on to what we're talking about with the MIDI. This is why when we get in here in the sequencer, we don't really delete MIDI, our scenes. So we just go ahead and keep those attached. And if you look here, I'll actually color code them because they are different. So it's a huge bonus to color code things. So you go lightest green, that's almost highlighter. And go like a little greener. Maybe we'll go do the same green on that one. Go a little darker green here. This is simply just for drums. We'll go a little puke green on this one. Okay, so we can kind of separate an accumulation of scenes by color this way. So we know the lightest one here is at the least amount. If you couldn't visually map it out in your mind, looking at your MIDI when it comes to drums, it's good to color code things.
The eyes are simply a camera for the part of the brain responsible
for what? You broke up. I lost you. What'd you say?
No, the microphone came on and something else was going on. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. But what were you saying? The part of the brain? I'm totally interested in hearing that.
Your eyes are just a camera that bring in the image. The processing is done by the brain. So you feed the brain right and you see everything in a whole different way.
Yeah, like when I'm like right now, I'm studying for cybersecurity, and I use different color highlighters for different levels of information, different types of things I'm trying to remember. So yeah, absolutely, it's definitely good practice.
It is. I may be seeing something that's not there.
What do you mean?
I mean, like it's how I read the situation.
Okay, yeah, well, everybody can learn and produce their own way. This is like I like to touch on a few different types of little things here as far as like color schemes go, simply to help you trigger whatever helps you learn better. Everybody has their own way of learning. So I might show you different ways of learning. I might tell you to go listen to certain songs. When we get to soundscaping and understand what you're hearing over here on this side of your brain, what's happening over here, what's happening in the middle. That's where we get into soundscaping.
A quick question. I'm like
Sure.
I said, sure. Written in the chat that I'm really a beginner. So I'm asking like really, ground level questions. But what's a sound envelope?
So it depends. There's more than one type of envelope. Now, where are you looking and seeing this? Is it in a module, a submodule? Like if I'm to open up something like this, you'll see attacks, delays. These are envelopes. These are how you can fine tune things to hear them better, less.
Where's the cursor?
Oh, can you see it right here?
Yeah.
All okay. Right. So this whole thing is an envelope. Now, envelopes are also kind of like the parameters for certain filters. So you open the envelope, stuff comes out, you close it, it's a lot tinier. It's kind of like the same thing we're talking about with this filter base. If we were to change the filter cutoff.
So characteristic B is for envelope?
Sorry, you're breaking up. What?
The word characteristic can be used for an envelope.
So I would say it's almost as if you were literally looking at an envelope. Let's say you had a sound just inside an envelope, but the envelope's closed. Well, the sound is going to be filtered way down. You're not going to hear it. It's going to be muffled, just like somebody trying to talk to you through a wall. But if you start opening up that envelope or that filter, you are just like you're opening up the door to somebody talking in another room. Now you can start to hear them more. And then they walk through the room and into your room, and that's you opening up the envelope even more. So it's kind of things being very closed and quiet to things being extremely loud. It's whatever parameters the envelope is set at is kind of how you're going to be able to assimilate that to what you're working with in the sound that you're trying to fine tune.
Got it. Thanks, Rob.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to test me here, guys.
Yeah, Rob will have whole Q&A session at the end. So if you guys have any questions, please write them down and we'll address them all at the end.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not sure how late we're going, but whoever's left at the end, I will give you a link, a Google Drive link to 4 gigs of these drum sample packs. Just for staying with us. What time do we have? 8:18. Okay. So, yeah, you can kind of say envelopes like this right here, Praveen, are also filters. So cut off small, you don't hear that much. It's somebody yelling from the other room. You open up the parameter of it. You open up the door. The person's walking in the room talking to it, gets louder. So it's kind of a volume thing, but I wouldn't recommend considering it a volume thing because a filter in an envelope set at a lower LFO or modulation can sound different, not just muffled to loud, but could be a completely different sound when you set different attributes to that module, like resonance, give it a kind of a fuzzy sound, a kind of a real tinny, like bright sound. Now, the envelope is going to sound different from low filter to high filter. So not necessarily volume. It's just more of an open and closed situation and something getting closer and louder and kind of blossoming.
Rob, one question, what you just, is it possible to control the beats per minute through the envelope, as it were?
Through the envelope. So what you, okay, so if that's called automation, let me get to that real quick because it's going to be part of your, you know, curriculum if you decide to take this class. So up here on the top left is your tempo. You can change the tempo at any point you want. Doing so will also change the timing at the very bottom. See if I speed it up, if I slow it down, you're going to have the same amount of measures, but the timing will be different. So if you were playing a track at 130 and the track, let's just say, was, you know, 48 measures long like we have now, it's going to be 1 minute and 30 seconds long. If you're playing the same track at 120, same amount of measures, it's going to be a little longer because the slower BPM is going to take longer to get to that time. If you were interested in automating things like, you know, the tempo of stuff, you work, once we get into this area of Ableton, when we're getting into sequencing, you open up this little tab here, and you actually have the ability down at the bottom for tempo, I believe it is. Yep. So once I clicked on tempo, 20 again. Okay. This line here, because it says mixer song tempo, will change speeds as I automate. Let's start it at 120. Let's go 16 measures and bring it up to 150. Now let's listen to it. Oh, let me turn that on. It's just going to progressively get faster, as you can see here. And when you have things automated, you will notice them with red little dots over the top left of their parameter box. So see, as you can see it getting faster. It's something I say I don't think I've ever messed with changing the tempo of things, but hey, that's anybody's business who's doing music. Not mine. It's always up to you.
In effect, tap and tempo are the same.
What in tempo?
Tap. It says tap up there, right?
So tap is going to
Oh, got it.
tap is going to be just like I mean, there's certain effects, like just like on a mixer, you could hit the tap button, and however fast you're tapping it, it's going to change that tempo to it. So yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. See, it takes the average of every 2 taps to change the tempo. Or sorry, every 4 taps. Okay. Now from here, we have created the bass. We've added the drums. Let's move this piano now over to this section. So realistically, we're starting to build a track because just dragging you guys around in Ableton without being able to give you full-on course lessons, it's going to be tedious. It's going to be too much information, and you guys are definitely going to sign out before you get as much information as I can provide for you tonight. So if you're making electronic music, just go over this real quick. In your DJing, a lot of times, most times, you have DJ friendly music. And DJ friendly music. Hold on. I gotta mute. Okay. All right. So with DJ friendly music, you usually have 30 seconds or a minute, or 16 or 32 measures of just drums, kick, hi-hat, stuff like that. Sometimes a little melody, because this allows you to mix in your tracks, from other tracks to mix out of. So in the scheme of things, the way I built this is simply to be DJ friendly, because now we're just hearing beats. I'm actually going to move the bass back to 33rd measure, because around this time is a minute, and that's kind of when you're changing you got the volumes all the way up, and you're changing that low end frequency to switch from the other track you were playing into this track. So we'll start from here, give it 4 measures to kind of hear what we did so far. And from here, we'll hear the bass and the piano come in. Now, the reason why I also teach MIDI for so long is because you start building like this, and obviously this is not enough for a track. You have other tracks you want to add in. You want to make the song full. You want to maybe add vocals, guitar stuff, any other synths, whatever, atmospheric noises. I can go on for days listing. This is where you are not helping yourself by just trying to jump over into the sequencer. What I would recommend doing, if you were adamant about doing that, is creating this area with most of your music in it and looping it up here at the top. That way it's just going to keep playing this section over here, and you can go back to this section, and even though you don't see these things playing, it's because they're playing over here, and you can move on and start adding new stuff. Let's say for shits and giggles, pardon my French, we have some sound packs. Like actually the other day I had a student, and she was asking me about sound packs. So I downloaded a couple. I don't normally keep these on my Ableton. I do like to make things from scratch, but it's because I'm an asshole purist. But there's good things you can do to kind of fill up your song and not make them loops on top of loops. And I'll show you what I mean by, let's see, I'm going to have this play. And then let's open up the drum loop. I'm going to try top loops. Now, top loops, if you see these when you're doing your own Ableton projects, top loops are drums, pretty much everything except for the kick. Think about the kick being the bottom. These are top drums. So we hear it. Now, hat loops are simply going to be hats. Maybe a little bit of, this is a minimal deep techno. You hear a little bit of this little alien sound in there. That's cool. I can show you how to create sounds like that as well. Everything is in the drum samples kind of adding just a lot of unique little bits and pieces to your drums to make them sound unique and not like every other drum loop you ever heard. So full drum loops, obviously, full set of drums, just like if you had a full set of drum rack here, it's going to be everything. But using this stuff, remember, doesn't make you a producer. You're not learning anything by finding a loop you like. What's that? Yes, yes, Q&A at the end. Okay, you're not going to learn how to create your own MIDI, fine tune your own sound if you're always going for drum loops and just adding drum loop on top of drum loop. Because if you don't fine tune with MIDI your own sound, you're really just curating somebody else's art, and you're becoming the curator of a museum as opposed to the artist, because you're just putting artwork together. You want to really learn how music is made, how it's separated, how you can chop it up in your head when you hear other people's music to be able to have your own growing experience as a producer. So I'm not going to use full loops, but if we were at a point with our drums and we really needed something to give it a little more pop and zest, let me turn this down, then we'll do that. We could play along with the track. Oh, I'll be gone. So we will work with this one. Now, this is an audio wave, as you can see down here. We are going to put it into the audio track. If you were to put it into a MIDI track, here's MIDI, drag it into MIDI track, well, it just turned it into an audio track. So that's how that works. Now you can go in different areas. Now this is not really 101 stuff, but there's different areas in instrument racks, samplers and stuff like that, where you can add your samples, your loops, and chop them up and create MIDI commands out of them. But for time-intensive purposes and kind of giving people the opportunity kind of learn a little quicker for this free class, we are just going to utilize this audio track. 9 times out of 10, when you have loops that you've already added into Ableton, like you see when we were sampling them here on the left side, they automatically kind of went in sync. That's the beautiful thing about Ableton Live. It kind of quantizes things for you. If you ever have the issue where it doesn't, and you're wondering why, let's say the track was like this. Well, we added it in there, it's drum looping, but we can see there's nothing at the end and it's a solid loop. Well, that's not right. And you can look at timing on things. You know, you zoom in on your grid for your scene, and you see the timing's a little off. You know, it's hitting a little before this grid, you know, but before the quarter measure, this is hitting a little before, and it's going to sound like this. No good. Luckily, Ableton kind of already quantizes it for you. Okay, let's call this top loop. Also here, we'll rename it by hitting Command R and hitting top loop. And I like to drag my drums over to be next to each other. Like-minded sounds, you know, toms, hats, alts, anything classified as drums, and try and keep next to each other. You know, we just click and drag things. Same thing with low ends, the bass, your synth noises, guitars, stuff like that. Anything with melody, kind of keep those lumped together, because eventually, when it comes down to week 8 and you're mastering, we're going to be grouping those like-sounding tracks together to give them their own parameters, so that when we go to send it down to somebody for somebody to master, or mastering it ourselves, we gave them the most opportunity to push the threshold, to crank up that limiter without getting interfering noises and frequencies. And that's why we kind of do everything in the beginning here and fine tune later. So we're going to start working with a little bit of effects here. Now, the top loop sounds cool. It's a little messy, but if I solo it, so it's the only thing I hear, and I go over to my audio effects, there's a couple things I can do. Also, when you're using drums samples, make sure you're on beats. And if you open up Ableton, if you download it and you look at all these things, anything you kind of highlight, you can see what it does on the left side here. So if I was to have a vocal clip or bass line, I would change it to tones, because tones is set for warping those particular types of samples. Same thing with repitching stuff. This would be, let's see, repitch would be for adjusting the playback rate and stuff like that. So if you were to repitch your drums and we change the tempo of it, it's going to change the pitch of it as well. So it's like no master tempo on if you're a DJ. We don't want that. We'll stick with the drums, or with beats, I'm sorry. Also cool things you could do with this type of sample. I'm actually going to turn the tempo up a little bit on it, because the original tempo of the track was like 128, and it's getting a little grainy without. So I will cruise it up a little bit here, make it sound a little cleaner. All right. When you deal with transients, which is subparticles of the sound waves, you have the ability to set a few settings and actually tighten up the whole entire sample itself via every piece of the grid that we're working with. So if I was to bring this down, now I just kind of tightened it down to be this minimal sound. And eventually I can automate it out to be louder and grow more. That's all done in automation later down the line. So what I'm going to do here, going into audio effects, top loop, playing, I'm going to start with an auto filter, and there's subfolders for this. You can always go through them. Like I said, click all the buttons, twist all the knobs, and eventually you're going to understand Ableton for what it is: 100 buttons, not 1,000. So auto filter is going to pitch down the high end of it from this side, because we have a high pass slope on it. This is a low pass. Sorry, this is a low pass. This is a high pass. If I was to turn down the frequency, see? If we do it from the opposite one, from a high pass, bring it down this way. What I want to do in this case, I'm going to do both. I'm going to pass, it's called a band pass. Kind of want to give it a little less low and a little less high. Now, from here, when you're in your track and it's laid out, you can kind of automate stuff like this. Now let's unsolo it. Move the frequency around. This will stop your track from being so robotic when you automate stuff like this. It may not be super noticeable to the listener, but trust me, if you just laid everything out in the sequencer and called it a day, you're going to have a super boring track. I think 1/3 of the making music in Ableton is the MIDI, the building of stuff here. Another third is sequencing everything out. And the last third is, excuse me, automating all your stuff to move and dip and come out. Like, so once you lay down, once you wrote out a story, now you have to edit your story. You got to take little bits and pieces out, like I showed you guys here in the beginning, where we took the kick out, stuff like that. You take certain samples, throw them back in, reverse stuff, kind of just give it a live, funky feel where, you know, your audience is not even going to know what happened. But trust me, watch any producers out there who are signing tracks. They automate everything. It's not just laying it all out. You know, in truth, you may spend the most time after you already created everything and laid it out in a linear format, and now you're fine-tuning it by adding stuff here and there. It's just the way of music. So, going back into this audio effect. Okay, I'm going to show you what I mean by the automation. Just like we did with the the tempo before. I'm going to click this and I'm going to drag it. See top loop. All right, we're going to have it start from the beginning. Oh, unless I miss it. Okay. All right. Now, when you see the grayed out area of a certain track, it's because this track is actually playing over here. If you want to go back to the arrangement part of the sound, you watch out for these little buttons here. This orange button here will turn anything that was playing here. And you see if I play all these, now they're all grayed out. Going back to arrangement, just by clicking that, now everything is playing that's playing here and not over in here. Because you can consider the session view sound and the sequencer sound over here two different songs. Now they won't play at the same time. It's always a or B. Is it playing on A or playing here? Which is where this little button will always turn on if you have playing stuff over here. If playing the clips, the scenes, instead of the arrangement view. And all you have to do is click that button and it stops playing here and it will always play in the sequencer if you have it laid out. Now, if we didn't have it laid out here and we're playing it from here, like, all right, now I want to stop it and play it in the sequencer, but we never added it, well, then that's what happens. So we'll undo that, Command Z, and we will do a little automating with this filter. So top loop filter, and yes, I have everything solo or muted out because this one track is soloed right now. When you choose a particular knob, button, whatever, to automate, you have to click it first. So if I click frequency on auto filter, we see frequency auto filter. Now this line represents that one effect. If I hit resonance on auto filter, now we see resonance. That represents that line. See the difference in the positions of the knobs? Watch, if I click the top one, it's already set higher. This one's set lower. Not really much to remember when it comes to that, but kind of gives you a good view that you're on the right track, clicking the right things to work on the right things. So I'm going to click the frequencer and I'm going to have my stopping point, my highest point, be right here for now. And then you can either click way down here or you can click and drag and then all the way down here. Now, since we already set to 111 the very beginning, you can see we have our automation set to all the way down to be, what was that, 26 hertz? So what happens is as it plays, the automation is written to bring the frequency up higher. Eventually you'll hear it. I'm going to give you guys a second for that. Now, if we were to unsolo it, listen to the drums with it. Now it's moving. It's got its own little automation doing its own thing where you wouldn't have that if you hadn't written that. Now you can do it manually if you have mapped your stuff here to a MIDI controller. But again, if you don't record that, what you're doing, it's just going to sit wherever you left it last. So turn that piano down. Now let's say we want to automate it back down. Just click over here. You want it to kind of move around throughout the track. Well, now you can do that just by changing the value of the red line. And as long as it's on this, then you're good. Now, it's not like you only have the ability to do one effect or one automation on one effect on one track. Not like that. It makes it very easy to click this button right here. Now we have just dropped down, it was a plus button, dropped it down to sit lower. We didn't duplicate our track. All we're seeing is now automation for this one particular effect. Let's say now I want to mess with the resonance. Click resonance, auto filter resonance. There's nothing written on it because there's no little red dot there. Resonance is going to bring particular frequencies either much higher or much lower. And if we're working on it right over here, let me kind of just mess with this. It's not going to sound great, but at least you can hear the change in the dynamic of what we're doing. Now I'm going to see how I made a hard pass up there, and you saw at this point, this particular effect, the resonance, jumped way up. Watch here. Just the ability to do multiple effects on single channels all at one time, and you can see them all. You can put as many drop-down automation lanes as you want. You're not duplicating your track at all. You are just clicking plus, and now we have that one. Well, let's say we wanted to we're going to put an echo. Let's solo this out so we can hear it. Turn the dry wet down. Make it stereo and go ping pong left to right. Turn the feedback down. Okay. Let's say we wanted to add reverb for this particular module, just building it up so that our song throughout the 16 measures progresses and it sounds like it's building a little more. We're not doing much. We're not adding anything really, but we are creating an automation that gives it that visibility. So the reverb is all the way down, echo, reverb. So you have it clicked on there. We'll start from the bottom here and we'll start to move it up. Now at this point, you start to hear nothing, and then you start to hear remember, we have all these automations working, so the song is constantly going to morph because we are constantly creating automations to make it do so. This is a great way to make one track fill up and sound like 3 tracks, if you will. Kind of gives it more presence, allows you to move on to something else without thinking you have to create something in its place just to make it sound just as much. Now, obviously this resonance was way too high, so auto filter resonance, I'm going to bring that down. It's just too much, and then maybe I'll bring it up. You can do as much automation for your music as you want, and we're just working with this one single track. So we've given life to a track just by creating automations with audio effects. It's a pretty cool, I mean, every different type of program will allow you to do this, but creating such seamless automation lane abilities, being able to just create drop downs for your automation is visually going to help you become more proficient in what you're doing. And like I said, this is like part 3 for making the track. You know, if we had everything laid out, and then you're getting your automations done and, you know, making your track sounds whole. You know, fine line that story instead of just saying, oh, I went to the store, it was great, now I'm home. You're saying, man, I drove to the store, there's a guy in my way, I almost crashed, and I got to the store, I was trying to get this and that, and then the grocery bag broke. So it's telling a full story the more you create the automation lanes and lines and adding little bits and pieces of your track here and there. Okay, I want to open it up for any questions for the moment. I'm glad you guys can hear me right now. I hope you guys can hear me.
Rob, Praveen.
Yes, sir.
Question on the plugins. Are they brand specific, or can can a plugin be used across different brands?
Many depending on the plugin folder that the system you're working on will allow. Most plugins will work Ableton as well as Logic, stuff like that. But typing in, Ableton plugin, synthesizer plugin, free or whatever, it'll tune it more towards what kind of plugins and VSTs, which are also plugins, were created for that particular DAW. Now, DAW is Digital Audio Workstation. All music programs, Fruity Loops, Logic, Pro Tools, Cubase, you name it, these are all DAW. Same thing, guitar. What's the one on the Apple guitar band or Garage Band? It's also a DAW. It's software to help you create and automate music, and that's what that is, Digital Audio Workstation. But yeah, so as far as brand specific, do your research and like obviously Google's the best thing to do for brand, not brand specific, but DAW specific. So Ableton specific, Logic specific, whatever you're using. That way it works more seamlessly than others where you would have to change a lot of settings or it may not run with it at the same time.
Yeah, I was asking because if, say, I get a plugin and I'm going to use it on an Ableton, can I give a copy to, say, a friend who's got GarageBand?
So, that would be brand specific. It depends how many authorizations that particular company will allow for that particular plugin. Some companies do several plugins. Actually, most of them do. You rarely find a decent plugin that the company only makes one plugin. But as far as being able to allow someone else to authorize and utilize that whole version, as opposed to the demo version, like you said, brand specific. It really depends.
Like
I think Spectrasonic, I think allows that. Sound Academy, really, it all depends. And as far as allowing whatever you buy or download for purchase or free for Ableton, isn't necessarily going to work for Guitar Rig. It's a isolated incidents. Whatever kind of programming they have for those particular tracks is going to dictate whether or not they can work for different programs.
Got it.
Yep. As far as authorization goes, that I couldn't speak to. There's 1,000 different companies that make plugins, and they all have different serial key. The fine print on everything. However, they have their company set up. It's I don't know. That's not something I could teach in 101. It would always be let's Google it and find out, but we're not going to do that because it doesn't have to do with Ableton.
GarageBand comparable to Ableton?
Hell no.
Okay, just checking.
No, and it's funny because people rag on Fruity Loops and stuff. I'm sorry, what?
I was saying I'm a beginner, so I'm going to throw out some basic questions.
No, that's cool. I've opened up GarageBand before. Very limited stuff. It's basically your digital 4-track recorder. Whereas Ableton, not only can you fine tune, tweak, change, and operate every little thing you want, but you can also do it all live. And do it with the keyboards. You can perform it live. You can write guitar live and just loop it, and then everything's seamless. You technically never have to hit stop in Ableton. And there's been many times where I never had to hit the stop button because everything just keeps, when you work in the session view, everything keeps looping, allows you to keep building. Eventually you make longer loops for stuff like melody and synth and maybe even guitar that make your 1 or 2 measure drum loops seem a lot longer at this point. Not every one of your loops for your tracks need to be 1 or 2 measures. None of them really do. Technically, if you are doing drum racks, more or less, like, answer this question: would you want to put a crash here in your drums with a 2-bar loop, so it crashes every 8 kicks? Or would you want to extend your loop out? Because now we're at 4, we hit the duplicate button, and now we're at 8 measures. Minimum 8 measures for a crash. So you would have to create and duplicate all your scenes here now to go 8 measures. And I will go ahead and jump into that 1 second.
Hey, Rob, as a homage, I wrote down a quote of something you said.
Sure.
You
Homage?
It's homage, man. It was like, whoa, bowed out to you. It's so awesome. It was total mind blown. You said transients are subparticles of a sound wave. And then there was a sound in my mind that went boom.
Well, like you had an epiphany or what?
I mean, I just enjoyed that sentence so much. Transients are subparticles of a sound wave. Wow. Wow. What an awesome look at it.
I can be sort of a rocket scientist sometimes when it comes to this stuff, but it is probably also because I am doing a cybersecurity boot camp. So these words are, bouncing around in my head.
Yes, so
Nico. Okay, Nico. You came in late, so I'm not sure if you already addressed this, but
There's Alana question before Nico,
oh, I'm
if
sorry,
you don't
totally
mind.
sorry. Yes, of course, Alana. Hi, and how you doing? I forgot where you moved, but it's good to see you on here. Hope you come back down soon. All right. Is plugin software is essentially based on synthesizers and real life hardware? Not necessarily. Sure, there's a lot of old school analog sounds in the synthesizers and kind of digital modules that replicate those things, or they attempt to, obviously. But there are so many companies out there these days that are just creating their own sounds. And this is not 101, but to create your own sound, you have to have different just sound waves. And you oscillate these sound waves at different timings to create this complex sound, which will give you something crazy like a resonance bass or something with some like wah to it. But as far as the question,
so what would you call, sorry, can you hear me, Rob?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
What would you call like these, because I see them in real life, right? And you have all like these buttons and knobs, and then they replicate them in the software. What are those called? Like,
oh, so yeah, there's like synthesizer hardware, just synthesizers. You mean like, so
but like
this,
a digital version,
right,
and that you could pull into Ableton?
Yeah, you literally would download it. You make sure like it's compatible with Ableton, download it, and then like if it doesn't show up right away, you go into your settings and you go down to plugins and you find the folder you have it, you download it to,
Okay.
whatever it may be, and you rescan, and then eventually it'll pop up. Now the way you'll see it, the way you'll see it pop up is going down to your plugins, and whichever type of plugin it is, VST, VST3, AV2, it really doesn't make a bit of a difference when it comes to the software and how it operates. But excuse me, here I have most of them set in AUV. It's just kind of the way I downloaded them, no big deal. But in here, in plugins, is where you can access all of your synths. Like
okay,
this
awesome.
one, yep. So this is one of my favorites right here. This is sound.
So cool.
Sound Academy, yeah. So with this, as far as them dictating or let's see, being similar to, hey, where's let's undo that. I gotta put a new MIDI track. Oh, if you are adding VSTs, you have to create the new MIDI track. Audio track won't work. If you have a track you already created highlighted, you're gonna change it all up. Luckily, you have the Command Z button to back it up and undo as many times as you need.
Awesome.
As far as because you guys have questions about plugins, depending on whoever created it, some sounds may sound like other plugins. Some are extremely rich and unique. This in particular, Sound in particular. Turn these off. A lot of very trancy stuff, but when you download plugins, bring that down. They'll have their own set and own set list of stuff, acid stuff, atmosphere, bass. And you can fine tune it and look through, what you're particularly looking for. They have folders for that and presets. Now, you'll learn a lot more about what sound is and oscillations and LFOs if you go out and download plugins like this, because you'll see, like in the beginning, we asked what envelopes are. These are envelopes. Envelope can be filters. This particular is attack. This is decay, right? Yep, decay. This is the sustain, and this is the release. So release, remember, if we open up a release, it's going to play a lot longer after the note. So if I just hit it with the release here, whereas if I turn this up, it kind of dies out a lot longer, rather than if release is down there. Same thing with attack. If you start it later, it's the beginning of the sample is going to start a lot later. Yes, I'll have. However, these cutoffs, these resonances are fine-tuned. Your envelopes is going to dictate however it sounds. Now, with external plugins, you can also automate things, but recommended when doing so to open up your plugin and hit configure. Okay, and now you'll see this little configure button turn green. Well, I want to configure this cutoff, so I just click the cutoff and it shows up here. Now, exit out of the configure, and now I can automate much easier now that I have basically an Ableton version of the effect automation. So I'll go ahead and do here. I'll just write something real quick. So and we'll go ahead and quantize. Change the length of everything so they're not overlapping. Right? Kind of fine tune where we want the low side of this particular filter or envelope wants to sit. I turn it down like this. And now, because we have cutoff automated, if I wanted to map it not to the keys, but to MIDI, I would hit Command M, click the button, I'll click it from here, and map it to this knob here. Exit out of it. Now this knob does what I say.
Yes.
Now I just hit the number 1 button to turn that kick off.
Very cool.
Right. Yeah. Watch is going everywhere. So
thank you.
Yeah, so that is just one example of 1,000 that you can do in creating music and mapping it to MIDI or to key stuff to kind of continue building your track while playing it live before you commit to sequencing it out. Thus, why we do 4 weeks in MIDI.
Yeah, we have a few minutes left. I think you only have a question from Nico, right?
Sorry about that.
Oh, no,
I
you're
get
good.
carried away. Accumulates, I'm sure what to explain the way.
No, guys, I have to tell you, Rob is very generous and he always takes his time to explain, and that's why he's an awesome instructor. Kudos.
I just love music and creating it. I've been doing it my entire life.
Yeah,
so
I always say it's not about the school, it's about the teacher, and Rob definitely marks all the checks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll always answer
Checks
your
all the
questions. Yeah, that too. Yeah, I'll always answer your questions at any time that you have them if I'm awake, and I usually am, except for early in the morning.
Did you
But
find Nico's question?
I'm about to answer it in a second.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he's warning about the high-low pass. Okay, the low shelf. Okay, so I didn't get into EQing or compression. Now, let's start with. I don't want to. I'm not going to teach you that the high-low shelf thing on this auto filter thing we already did. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the piano. Let's turn this off so we're not listening to it. So go into our audio effects on our tracks, and every track should have its own EQ. I think it's week 4 where I show you guys, now you've built your drums. Now we're going to EQ all your drums to isolate those particular frequencies. That way, when it's time to master and things are said and done, you can push that sound to the limit and there won't be conflicting frequencies. So every song will have, every little noise will have its place. So we're a grand piano, and I'm going to just double click on EQ8. This is the one you want to work on. I think EQ3, the only thing it's good for is if you're DJing with it. So you have 3 knobs. So basically DJing high, low, mids, whatever. And that's not what you want to do when you're creating music. So going into the EQ8 on the piano track, if we hover over any of these selections here for the different types of slopes, bell, whatever, it'll tell us what it is. If I go and get a high pass filter, so I always get confused with high pass and low pass. It starts at the low end, but it is a high pass. No, it's low cut. Okay, this here, low cut. So when you're looking at this, this is your low end frequency area. Kicks, sub basses, you move up, and then you start moving in frequency areas, become your synths, basses, your synths, claps, toms. All the way up the high end is going to be more your vocals and your hi-hat, stuff like that, the teeny little, the bright sounding stuff. I'll show you that in a minute. Probably a better example to do it. I'm going to just drag it over onto the drum rack so we can hear all those, that array of elements, because we have highs, we got mids, we got lows. So creating a hard pass here, this is what happens when we have the frequency turned up. Just like a filter, we lose the low end. I'm going to solo this out so we can hear it better. This is our entire drum rack track. Now, what I will do more times than not is automate a version of EQ8 to play from here, so I could still hear my kick, but like in the beginning and the ending of a track where you don't want the kick to come in yet, we just automate this to turn on and off, instead of like creating a new sound to hit when the kick is out. You can even automate it down. So that's your low end cutoff. When we switch it to this one, this is called a low shelf. It's going to take out the majority of whatever point the frequency is set at, but it's going to let it bleed out a little bit at the end. I believe it's, let me look at the measuring of hertz. I think it's 24 hertz difference for which is, it's a lot of technical stuff I'm not really going to go into, but this way, if it's lower, you can still hear some of the low end before it gets to this frequency, whereas opposed if I just switch it to the hard pass, well, now it's completely gone. But the the soft pass gives it a little bit. Now, let's say we have a problem frequency. You know, one of our noises has just got too much sound, even too loud. I'm going to turn one of them up. Let's see. I'm going to turn this up kind of loud. This is our open hat. Oh, start it from here. Let me change my loop over here. That's where the hi-hat starts. Okay. Now looking back at the EQ, Now watch what happens in this area if I was to turn down this hi-hat. It kind of dies out. It's not as full. Now we just have frequency pushing from this hat itself. So now turning it back up, which is cool, but we still have like a peak. Now the peak is sitting right around here. Well, that eventually will be a problem when it's competing with something like vocals or clap area, because there's so many frequencies and noises that are competing for the same spot that you're just going to make this muddy sounding track, and you're never going to know why if you don't learn the fundamentals of EQing. So from here, let's see, bell number 4, and you can obviously create a number of 8 bells. I do like to add the 8th one for the top, just to kind of cut off an area that I need to from here. See, this will be your high shelf. Okay. Now, if we're on number 4, we want to change this to a bell shelf instead of a notch. Okay, because what'll happen is this area right here is a problem. So I'm going to tune this one notch to this area, and then I'm going to drop the gain on it. Well, obviously it's too much, so we take something, this is called bandwidth or resonance of that particular track, and now we're kind of just tucking down that high end area of whatever frequency we chose to do so. See, if I was to turn it up, just that frequency would be, you know, jettisoned into the very top end of the EQ. It's going to be way too loud. That's going to be a huge problem. So you see here, we turn the resonance or bandwidth up, it starts to taper out more frequency that's on the either side of it. So, but since that's a problem, that because you see the little sharp edge right there, then we kind of just bring it down. We open it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be that severe. We can kind of duck it down since it's only hitting a little bit louder than the rest. So now we've kind of EQ'd out that sound from being a problem in the future. And this is kind of the same way, thing for your answering for the high-low pass situation. And if I was to put the auto filter on it, since it's what you saw before, this this is low pass. I guess low pass, the more you turn the low pass down, you're only getting the low end to pass through. See? Now, same thing with the high pass. Now we're only getting the high pass to come through until the frequency is set down into the very bottom of it. The bell, like I showed before, obviously it takes a little both. You can change the resonance up or the bandwidth, same thing as this here. And in showing you this module, the auto filter as well as the EQ8, is how we start seeing the whole software as when we went from 1,000 buttons down to 998 buttons. And the more you learn Ableton and what each button does, the more you have like-minded modules and knobs and buttons that do the exact same thing. So it's a beautiful way to work, and instead of just trying to throw music on top of other stuff, you know, other sounds just to mask things, I promise you, you will quit being a music producer, or you will continue doing it wrong until you get it right. High pass crowds puts hands in the air. Low pass, yeah, exactly. Yeah, however it's going to be for you to remember things from your own experience, your own life. Utilize it. Everything in life is relative. At the molecular level, we are all made of atoms, so everything has to kind of flow to begin with. So don't deny the learning, because if you do so, you might as well figure out something else to do. It's that easy, but you have to dedicate your time to being a producer.
Rob, before you share that fancy link that you want to share, can you tell guys who's attending why your course stands out compared to other courses?
Well, I think it kind of I explain that by just doing here. I will take the time because I'm passionate about it to explain to you that, I'm not teaching you just to make music. I want you to understand what it is about your own brain, mind, and heart that allows you to learn and want to continue pursuing these things. Okay. I want to make sure that you grasp the concepts. There'll be points in the academy or the semester that you are going to have issues. And the fact that somebody, whether it's me or Alan or Valentina, who's always going to be there to answer a question for you and do what we can to make sure that you are knowledge, in a knowledge sense, up to the level of where the course is. I think that's a huge part of what sets us apart. Well, I'm using the same word, same sentence.
Yeah, and another great thing, guys, once you graduate, even halfway through the course, you'll be able to get 50% off Ableton, and will provide you a certificate overall enrollment, which is amazing perk. In addition to the knowledge that you'll be getting from Rob, because he's absolutely amazing instructor. It's a really hard to find somebody who is passionate about teaching, and he is one of them. He is a treasure and a find. That's first. I wanted to share, and also as we have been running music courses for quite a while, and what I noticed, and even myself, I went through this challenge when I would go to Udemy, I would buy a course for $20, and I would never even finish that course. Why? Because there is zero accountability. So the way we structure the course here in Academy, we're giving you an assignment weekly, and you go along with the other group mates, classmates, right? And we will require you to complete the assignment, and also you will receive a feedback on your complete assignment. So which brings this accountability part that will set you for success, right? So
Right.
that's what I have personally been observing, that courses people buy, and statistically, if there is even statistics that 50% of the enrollment they don't even complete. Why? Because it's not structured properly. And
Valentina,
Rob, yes,
I agree with you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
sure, of course.
I totally agree with you, because I've taken a couple classes. I've taken a master class, and I haven't been engaged.
Here
And
you go.
this was great, and I love the fact that he's got homework that he's gonna give us.
Yes,
Put it this way.
and trust me, we will make you feel guilty if you don't complete. You will feel guilty
Yeah,
as
because
well.
I'm an artist, and I need that diligence, someone
Yeah.
whipping my ass from time to time.
Oh,
Here's the
totally.
deal. Here's the deal. Okay. So the assignments I give you will never take longer than the 1 hour video you're going to watch anyways for the curriculum. And it's going to be everything within that week. It's all right there in front of you. It's not like you're studying for something. But if you wanted to make music and you're learning as the courses go, well, your assignment is just to kind of mimic and complete what you learned for that particular lesson. Because come feedback session, we have you collect it all, save it, and send it to me. So we just do a little a recap of what you did. Here's what could be a little better, and I say, I'll virtually pat you on the back for what you did. But yeah, it's not like, oh, you need to go out and study. If you can't dedicate at most, and this is at most 1 hour a week to
You're not gonna
learning,
learn.
right? Because it's got to be part of your life. Everything
Yeah,
I
and
do,
the great
I do
advantage, you can
everything.
ask questions right there. Yeah.
Listen, everything. The reason I do this is I do it for a reason, because I want to share my ability, and then it's not just to teach you, and not just because I know Ableton, but to express yourself musically. You know,
Hell yeah.
yeah, and you can know everything there is to know about music and know nothing about the program, and you'll be stuck. Vice versa, you can know nothing about music and know everything about the music and still be stuck. It's a great balance of understanding what you like, what makes you tick, kind of how to create the automations for your entire life. You know, art dictates life, so I want to be able to take what you are learning, teach you more, and be able to dictate how you feel in the program, and eventually render it down, send it off, master it, and feel proud of what you've accomplished because it's part of who you are.
All right, so we are totally amazed with you, and we can't wait for that link.
I, I appreciate that.
Can
Yeah, hold on. So that link is the one we talk about the beat music, right? The one I sent back to you.
Oh, no, the one that you wanted to share at the end of the class.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna give you guys right now for that 4 gigs that drum samples library right here to work with.
Mhm.
Yep. Normally
And
I
I
reserve it for the
will,
students, but you guys have been so
mhm.
patient with me that I can't help but want to give it to you.
And another perk we're gonna give you a first class of Rob course. I'm gonna send you that link. So you can possibly.
Right, that course and it teaches you how to. There's 2 different videos for the first course. The first one is how to install Ableton. Second one is how to install that pack to your library, as well as the drum samples, which is what we covered so far already.
So this link from me, that's the access to that first week of the course.
Okay, I am copying this link right now.
And I will make sure to send you a recorded video, all the necessary links. I have all your emails, and we are so grateful for you guys to attend and happy to share the knowledge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it, or
Yeah.
I do.
I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me talk.
It's a pleasure to hear you.
There's no things, what, true altruism, right? I mean, I also do this so I can get better at teaching. You know,
All right,
so,
let me check and
yeah.
make sure this drum samples link works.
Okay,
Rob, are your classes remote?
yes.
Everything is online, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, I can work separately. We can do one-on-one sessions via Zoom the whole time. We can share screens, do everything privately, so I can focus my time on you. But all the information and stuff for that will be on was at abletonproduction.com to kind of book and schedule. But feel free to ask me questions anytime. If you guys, since you guys were on there, I'm gonna give you guys my number right now. Just if you have WhatsApp, talk to me on there. Don't message me directly because that's just gonna be way too much. I like to keep the business on WhatsApp.
Oh, let me send the correct link. I did not type it correct. Ableton Production.com.
Everybody click on that Google Drive link. Make sure that you're able to see that file and download the whole thing. The drum samples I mean, you can go into the in particular subfolders, which is drums, loops, and one shots. But I mean, if you download it all at once, I mean, that's how it's going to be laid out for you over here, so that you can separate what you're doing, what you're looking for, stuff like that.
Yes, this very intensive course, I have to warn you guys, because you have to make sure your time management in place before you enroll, because you need to set aside at least minimum 3 hours a week. That's a minimum to be successful. And as you go, the more and more challenging information will come in. And the most important part, of course, is to complete your assignment on time. right? Because if you fall behind, there is no no way for us to even catch you up, because it's a very intensive, a lot of information. So please take it seriously, and we hope to see you in class.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
what she said.
Thank you.
All
Yeah,
right. Have a
absolutely.
good
Have a good
one.
night, guys.
All right,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Anybody else have any other questions while I'm still on here? If not, my phone number's right there. Message me on WhatsApp, and I'll respond as soon as I see it, more times than not.